Hello and welcome to episode 119 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm the father of the most beautiful beast in the world, Jerry. And we are coming off of a TTP week. Yes, that's right. TTP. Trust the process. And as a man who has read Sam Hinkie's manifesto dozens of times, as a man who owns 6 different TTP related t-shirts, as a man who actually named his son Sam Levitan after Sam Hinkie, I am well versed in the process. Of course, I'm referring to Brandin Cook, who was the key to the week 5 slate. Remember, of course, that in week 4, Cooks was 22% owned in the Wildcat at 4,500 against the Vikings. No issue with his role, which was elite, but quite frankly, I did not think that 12 targets was in the realistic range of outcomes for Brandin Cook. In fact, we had him projected for 6 targets, as I discussed in the cheap wide receiver article on Thursday. Now we add in this home game against the Jaguars defense, already among the worst in the league, but without top pass rusher Josh Allen, top linebacker Myles Jack, top cornerback CJ Henderson, top slot corner DJ Hayden, and Cooks is 4,100. And he's 14% in the Wildcat, only 6.9% in the Millie Maker. And count me as one of the people who was still tilted off of week 4 and not thinking clearly on Cooks maybe. And luckily, we have the projections, which are not biased, right? Cooks was our number 6 best value among all wide receivers on DraftKings, even with that target projection around 6. He was our 6th best value in the projections on DraftKings at 4,100, behind only DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Calvin Ridley, and Tyreek Hill. Luckily, Wiggins wasn't biased. He was pounding the table for Brandin Cooks. And so, as embarrassed as I am to admit it, I played 25% of my cash action with a Cooks, Kelsey, Watson team and 75% with a Hopkins, Ebron, Danny Dimes team. And look, I hate to be flip-flopping here. Last week I talked on here about IKB, I know better. Now I'm suggesting that unbiased actually knows better. And the truth is that I think, as usual in life, the answer is somewhere in between. Of course, running backs matter some. They're just relatively less valuable than other positions for a dozen different reasons. Well, one thing I do want to say about Brandin Cooks is the wide receiver position as a whole in week 5 had such little opportunity cost. Outside of maybe Robbie Anderson, there were 0 standout plays. But in week 4, one of the reasons I was so tilted about DJ Moore and about Brandin Cooks in week 4 was because the opportunity cost was massive. There were like 10 wide receivers I really wanted to play. Not the case in week 5. So the Zacchaeus low floor, playing Cooks wasn't likely to be as painful. Right, so I think we can add important context and identify situations that just can't find their way into a projection. On the flip side, I think understanding a baseline and a range of possibilities through math is super valuable. So I think Bales said it best, we want to be data-driven, but not a data scientist. And there's a big difference there. Some people just can't understand any context or what assumptions need to be made because they're just too buried in the data. I think that ideally we are data-driven, but also understand that DFS and NFL take some soft skills and some context and some understanding of things that can't be built into a projection. So, we're data-driven, but we're not data scientists. And I think Dink and Mike Leone really are 2 of the best at that. In my opinion, they're absolutely smashing this year, as expected. Anyway, in terms of hedging, obviously hedging in cash is not something that I want to really ever do. For one thing, it's actually scientifically proven to reduce your penis size by 15 to 20%. And it's really hard to be successful with both, even something as small as a 3v3 like what I ran or a 2v2. Luckily on this slate, I was actually able to win some higher stakes head-to-heads with the weaker lineup and sweep, obviously, with the nut lineup, so I got really fortunate. By the way, I got a question from Carry Out Cole. He said, any condoms left? Or did you use them all up playing 2 cash lineups? Yeah, I deserve that, Cole. I deserve that, Cole. Anyways, let's get to tournaments. And again, it's wild, man. Of course, someone asked me on the last minute live stream on Sunday morning with Silva, what's the best stack for single entry? And I said, the Houston-Jacksonville stuff. 3rd straight week, I think what you needed was pretty identifiable before lock. Like, it wasn't something crazy like, I don't know, Derek Carr throwing 6 touchdowns or somebody just way off the board. I already mentioned the Jacksonville defensive situation. Cooks, Fells with Akins out, and Fuller, all good values. Bring back options in Chenault and Chark. I actually had 2 of those stacks going, but I had both Fuller and Chark in those, so I was dusted. My best GPP team this week was actually a 4 p.m. only team where I had Zeke, Hunt, Lamb, Slayton, Gaskin, thanks to the Jordan Howard news, and Cleveland defense, and that was enough to really do well. My best main slate team was a Kyler Nuke team, and I'd note that Kyler was just 6% owned, and Nuke was only 12% owned against the Jets. So I think just in a vacuum, like that's always going to be good, just those ownerships on Kyler and Nuke. And one of the reasons I wanted to play this was to actually use Jeff Smith as the bringback on the Jets. He was 3K just like Zacchaeus, so massive leverage there. You know, Zacchaeus was 34% owned, Jeff Smith 10% owned. And hell, I mean, Jeff Smith saw 11 targets. It really could have worked out. Also played Calvin Ridley in that lineup for max leverage against Zacchaeus. So if Zacchaeus failed, Calvin Ridley smashed, and Jeff Smith played well. Just max leverage there. Had Fells in there thanks to the Akins news. Had Hunt and Browns D, Mike Davis, 99% CMC, of course. So yeah, I think that was a good team. Ended up like 20 points short of the ETR optimal cash team, which is wild. But anyways, is what it is. Got a question from Jeff Becker I wanted to mix in here. He says, do you think DFS players over extrapolate target shares from games where players left due to injury? Zacchaeus was targeted behind every Falcon previously above him in the pecking order yesterday. I think that was projectable with a healthy Ridley, Gage, etc. Yeah, I think that everything needs context. So I said on Friday night that there was a chance Zacchaeus would be the number 4 target on the totem pole, maybe number 5 behind Ridley, Gage, Hurst, and maybe even one of the running backs. But this is also a team that projected to throw among the most on the slate, and so Zacchaeus playing every snap, which he did. He ran a route on 39 out of 39 Matt Ryan dropbacks. Well, I don't think it's ever going to be too bad in cash, especially when the opportunity cost was so low. But yeah, I think, you know, a huge part of this game and a lot of subjectivity especially in NBA, but also in NFL, is going to be projecting after an injury. We don't have big samples of when Julio Jones is out and Zacchaeus is in. Like, if you don't have a big sample, you know, we're going to be projecting what Zacchaeus' target share will be and really how good he is. Okay, before we get to the listener questions, I wanted to touch on this FanDuel live scoring situation. I actually didn't play on FanDuel this past week, but man, this is such a disaster. I mean, first of all, forget about everything that happened this week. Look at the inability to download the CSVs of contests. I mean, that's been an issue that people have been beaking about for like 7 years. I can't believe we still can't download the CSVs of contests on FanDuel. But now, you know, basically what happened was there was an error with FanDuel stat provider. So the live scoring wasn't working and the ownership wasn't working. And so, you know, I think there's some people who mistake that live scoring is just about getting a fun sweat and knowing where you stand. Like, we actually need live scoring to work so that we can make decisions that are going to impact millions of dollars because of late swap. So yeah, anyone who played on FanDuel this weekend should be pissed. Like, the $100 credit or whatever they're giving seems like nothing compared to the impact this had on the games. And if there wasn't late swap, I wouldn't think that it was as big a deal. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a mistake. You know, people only think of late swap as something you do when someone is like surprisingly scratched or there's an injury. But really, it's something that everyone should be doing in situations when you're blocked. You got off to a bad start, you want to be more contrarian. You got off to a good start, you want to be less contrarian, etc. So yeah, this FanDuel situation, man, it is messed up, and I'd be very upset if I had played on FanDuel this week for sure, and I missed opportunities to late swap. All right, it is time for everyone's favorite portion of the program. Producer Luke, hit the theme music. All right, really appreciate the questions. As always, going to do a 7-pack today. First question comes from Gregory. He says, watching the Kama Sutra show on Friday night, I almost tweeted to give you shit about your chair, as from the top, it looked like one of the folding chairs you see at weddings. Upon closer examination, I see it might actually be really expensive. Curious what your take is on chair selection for the office. Is there utility in spending up for the best like we do with a mattress, or are we just wasting money? Yeah, I get a lot of questions about my chair because it looks a little unique. It is not expensive. It was actually recommended to me by Joey Ingram. It's an IKEA Marcus chair. It's definitely not expensive. And honestly, I wouldn't even really recommend it. Like, it's just okay. I don't really love it. My back is still on absolute fire by the end of the day. It's not good. Once I moved to the new house, I'm really looking forward to getting like a true GTO ergonomic office. I think for my health and my back, and at least, part of having a true GTO office, I think for me will be like a standing desk, or at least a optional standing desk. I think makes sense for your health, and maybe a treadmill desk, but for sure a better chair, if not that. And to answer your question, yes, of course, your workspace should be a priority. Like, I'm willing to spend to have the best possible setup. I'm spending 10, 15 hours a day in this place. It's just a no-brainer. Of course, it's a priority to have the best possible office setup. I've actually never had this, but I do want one of those like 2 monitor setups where one mouse goes across both. Right now, I have like a laptop and a big desktop monitor setup, but I want to have that kind of 2 monitor setup. It reminds me back in like 2017, 2018, during the big crypto boom, I would walk into WeWork and there would be, no joke, like 5 to 10 people every day with those dual monitors just trading crypto. What a time to be alive. Question 2 from Brian Schultz. He says, I played one of the free roll contests on Yahoo this weekend and noticed the pricing was incredibly soft compared to DraftKings and even FanDuel. Do you find there to be an edge in any of the less frequented sites that can be exploited? Yeah, for sure. So any site that has less liquidity, you can find good action. I mean, think about it. Like, if I wanted to play 10K in cash or in head-to-heads, I mean, that's just not happening anywhere but FanDuel and DraftKings. There's just not enough liquidity, not enough action on those lower tier sites. So yeah, if you're playing smaller, I think you can find good games there for sure. There formerly was, I think, some risk with some of these smaller sites. Like, we've seen smaller sites go under and have trouble paying people out, and we saw it in poker too. And so that was one reason I think people stayed away. But now with all the regulation and everything and all the laws that have been passed, I think some of the third, obviously Yahoo is fine, but some of the third sites are almost certainly fine as well. Question 3 from friend of the show, TJ Hernandez. Which cut of meat do you order at a steakhouse and how do you get it cooked? Yeah, it's amazing how many people judge others based on this question. Like, oh, you don't get your steak extra bloody? You're not a man. I mean, come on, there's no cow blood dripping down your chin. Do you even have a dick? And then there's people who demand you have the bone in your steak. Like, oh, you mean you're not like chewing off the actual animal bone, extra bloody, like a true savage, to remind you what you're eating? Like, I mean, these takes are just insane. So yeah, at the risk of being ridiculed, I'll be honest. I typically get a filet and I get it medium. There was a time in my life where I got it medium well, and people can ridicule me for that, but I get it medium now. And I actually like it with the peppercorn crust. I believe it's called like au poivre or something like that. And I get that people are going to rip me for this, but I love those cracked peppercorns, man. I like it a little crispy on the outside and a little spicy. But bottom line is, I don't think people should be judged by their meat selection. There's way too much of this being judged by meat selection going on. Way too much. Question 4 from Kinseth. He says, a question last week talked about taking shots on larger tournaments after being up 60K. A critical thing he missed is that he would still have to pay taxes. Doesn't it feel like a no-brainer to move up in stakes, considering he is getting into something like a 4K event for 70 to 80 cents on the dollar, depending on your tax bracket? Yeah, it's a good point, Kinseth. So I usually don't answer tax questions until we get into December, but it seems like a lot of people out there are having some nice scores. So please be aware that at the end of the year, you will receive a 1099 MISC from DraftKings or FanDuel if you profited more than $600 on their site. There is no way around it. So Kinseth's point is that one that, hopefully is easy to understand for everyone. If you're up going toward the end of the calendar year, you can be more aggressive because you're getting a bit of a discount. Like, if you win, it's great. You have more money. If you lose, yeah, you lost, but actually you only lost 70% because you save on your tax bill. But please, by no means am I a CPA. Please consult with yours with any and all tax questions you have. Question 5 comes from Maticus. He says, what equipment do you use to record your pods? Mics, lighting, filters, sound dampeners, etc. Thanks. So all I have is a dong mic, like a simple Yeti that's like $60, and I have a regular webcam. I don't have any lighting or filters or anything, and I get that that's not the most professional setup. But man, to me, that's just like not what's important. Once you have like minimum sufficiency in terms of mic and camera, like the rest is just fluff that I don't think moves the needle. Like good looking people and slick graphics and fancy mics and fancy cameras. Like what people actually care about, in my opinion, is authenticity, and it's the information. And so many big companies and even like people just get this wrong. They think they have some fancy set and they wear makeup and they spend zillions on graphics and they have the best show or whatever. That's just not it. I think the audience can see that it's inauthentic. So honestly, I think whatever success I've had in this, and Evan too, our first, second, third, fourth priority is playing fantasy and conveying the best info to people. I certainly, want to upgrade all that other stuff, but it's really just a back burner thing. And honestly, maybe I'm crazy, but I think people actually appreciate that. It's kind of hard for me to articulate, but it's just like being a normal human and not a corny TV type. I think people respond to that better. And, maybe not like at scale with zillions and zillions of like mainstream audience, but in like the hardcore fantasy community, people playing for real money, people really trying to win. Like, I actually think people appreciate like this kind of minimum sufficiency setup that I have. And, maybe that's a bad take. Honestly, maybe people want me to get the super special mic and the super special camera and the professional set. I don't know. But it's just not a priority, I don't think. Question 6 from Goat's Milk says, what's more plus EV? Betting a 5-team parlay with all favorites on the money line or zero in on one bet you really like for the week? Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to let everyone know that we are soon going to be launching a free YouTube show, like loosely talking about sports betting. Will be me, Peter Jennings, aka CSU Ram 88, and a rotating crew of guests from ETR, Wiggins, and Dink, and other people. Obviously, we will not be making picks. We will not be giving out plays. We're not sports bettors. We are fantasy players. But the show is going to be early in the week. We're just going to hang out. We're going to generally talk about sports betting, maybe play some lottin, make some bets against each other, a few beers, a few laughs. So head to the ETR YouTube page if you're interested. Hit the subscribe button so we can keep keeping some of these shows free for you guys that we've been doing on YouTube. And shout out to producer Luke, who's been putting all this on YouTube, and it looks beautiful up there. Okay, back to the question from Goat's Milk. So yeah, if I'm a bookie and someone is taking 5-team parlays, like I immediately know they're a sick fish. Like literally. And if they're taking all favorite money lines, I know for sure they're like John Q. Public, literally drawing dead to win long term. Basically parlays are typically paying out at below what the true price should be, oftentimes well below. And on top of that, the chances of a recreational bettor stringing together 5 plus EV bets is like almost zero. At least if you make a straight bet, a single bet, well, there's a chance you could stumble into a plus EV one, hopefully through line shopping, etc. So yeah, Goat's Milk, like if you're trying to have fun, then by all means, fire away on the 5-team ML parlays. It's kind of like the Millie Maker, in DFS. If you're just trying to have fun, and again, 99% of people listening to this should just be in it for fun, then by all means, fire away on the 5-team ML parlays. If you're trying to give yourself a chance to win in the long term, I think those are a pretty easy avoid. All right, last question we're going to do today comes from Chuck P. He says, does GenderLabs LLC provide consultations for thruples or similar multi-party GPP situations? Regarding these larger field tourneys, do we increase EV by limiting to max 2 to 3 lineups, or is single entry still preferred? Yeah, so basically what Chuck is asking about is multiple partner situations. No, we don't. We don't do that, Chuck P. here at GenderLabs. Get your head out of the gutter, you pervert. Do I look like an orgy guy to you? It's enough for me to ruin one person's sexual experience. I don't need to ruin multiple people's sexual experience in one interlude. All right. That is going to do it for today's solo pod. We'll be back with Silva for Team by Team. We'll be back on Friday night for the slate breakdown with Silva and Wiggins. We'll be back on Saturday for Dink and Leone's heralded GPP show. So, for producer Luke, for Jerry, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.